Okay. Good morning, everybody. I hope you all had a great weekend. I have to say I was quite busy. I didn't even notice that the Pagawis were here. Okay. So, I'd like to convene the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee meeting for Tuesday, May 28th, 2024 at 10 a.m. I'm going to read the shortened script for open meetings. Good morning. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. Please be aware that other people may be able to see you, and take care not to share your device's screen. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please silence all devices and phones. For items with public comment, after committee members have finished their discussion on an agenda item, the chair will afford members of the public up to 3 minutes to speak. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their name and any affiliations. To give public comment, you must be recognized by the chair and speak through the chair. There's to be no crosstalk with others in attendance. In the interest of efficient use of our time, please speak through the chair. To be recognized for making a public comment, use the raise hand feature by clicking on the reactions tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then click on the raise hand button. When you've finished your comment, please click the lower hand button. It's important for me to note that CREC isn't required by law to take public comment. We do so because we need your invaluable input. We view public comment as a privilege, so please remain respectful in your comments and do not disparage other speakers or the members of this committee. Okay, calling this meeting to order. I'm going to check in and see that everyone's here and everybody can hear me. I'll start with you, Tim Brain.
I'm here.
Jen Carberg.
Here.
Gary Beller.
Here.
Doug Rose.
Here.
Sarah Boyce.
Here.
Joanna Roach.
Here.
And staff. Leah Hill.
Here.
And Vince Murphy.
Here.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Peter, Christy is just getting on right now. Just want to let you know.
Okay. Do you hear me, Christy?
I do, yes. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay. Next item on the agenda is public comment, and this is public comment where it has nothing to do with anything on the meeting. So is there anybody who wants to comment on something unrelated to our agenda? Nope.
Peter.
So, yeah.
Peter?
Yes.
I have a public comment that Mr. Koenig, who I see is here, had asked me to read. He sent this back on May 16th. It does have to do with Article 69. So not sure if you want me to read it now or if we want to wait for number 5 on the agenda.
Well, let's see. We're almost to number 5 anyway, so we're just going to approve the minutes after public comment. So just go ahead and read it, and then if we need to read it again, we can do that.
Okay. So it says, "Good morning, Ms. Hill. Thank you again for keeping in touch. We are very concerned about the selection by a member of your group to build a prototype plan without first having the select board move to have Article 69 amend the Nantucket Code, and then follow Article 69 instruction to map the entire district and break it down into so-called sub-districts. After this is done, maybe you might be able to pick a sub-district to prototype. We will be very closely following this, as we are sure you will put your efforts into establishing a coastal resilience district and not just another recreational area with no parking. Regards, Jerry Koenig."
Okay, thanks, Mr. Koenig. Is there any other public comment? Nope. Okay. Approval of the minutes?
We don't have any minutes to approve.
Okay. Okay, so number 5, report and discussion on town meeting statuses of Article 67 and 69 by Vince Murphy, Town of Nantucket Sustainability Programs Manager. All you, Vince.
Thank you, Peter. Leah, am I able to share screens? Yes.
Yes.
I'm just going to share one slide briefly. Let me know when you guys can see this in presentation mode.
You can see it.
Is it in presentation mode? Excellent.
Now it is.
Thank you. So thanks everyone. Town meeting, as people may well know, it took 3 nights this year. So Articles 67 and 69 that I'm going to briefly give an overview on. I'm sorry for all those of you that were at town meeting, most of you I know, but this is also the public forum where we discuss these things. So, it's good to have a recap. So I'm just going to cover 67 first. This one was the Home Rule petition. It was the very first article heard on night 3. The Finance Committee motion was positive on this. There was a lot of discussion from the floor. People were asking questions about it. People were bringing in unrelated other projects, other coast resilience projects, not just discussing this article. And there was, it's fair to say, there was some confusion, essentially, because people don't understand how one project differs from another and how there's separation between projects. But that is just the nature of having a lot of projects once you've come out of a very long planning process of developing a coastal resilience plan. And we're doing so well that we have over half of our projects underway. So that is probably the origin of why people are confused and don't see the difference between projects. We're going to have to do a better job differentiating between projects. That is clear. There was a motion on the floor at town meeting, not to table, but to postpone indefinitely. That passed 178, I beg your pardon, to 135. 315 people voted on that one. So we will bring that one back at a future point, probably. Article 69, this article was the bylaw. The Finance Committee motion going in on this one was positive. This attracted even more attention. The discussion on this went on for about 45-50 minutes. This was quite the discussion. And trying to explain the difference between the Home Rule petition and the bylaw, that they're ostensibly the same. The big difference being in Article 67 that it is the right for the town to assess the costs against homeowners in the benefit areas, and the bylaw would work more like regular betterments, where we wouldn't be able to do things like the annual operation and maintenance fees. And that's a bit of a problem. People had a lot of discussion about maps on that one. People thought there should be maps in advance, and I kept trying to say the same thing over and over again. I'm sorry for everyone that was in the room. We need to have the project and understand who benefits before we can map it. That is something we're going to have to work on heavily this summer. Long story short, this passed a town meeting 229 to no being 115. Beg your pardon. More people voted on this one than in Article 67 as well. That was interesting. So now Article 69 is passed. What are the next steps? And also, what are the next steps for Article 67? I apologize, I have a little cough. For Article 67, over the summer, we're going to have to work to make that part of the town code. That's effectively a job for town administration and lawyers. And this can be a little bit variable in time, but usually, from what I understand, these things become effective in about September. Now, add the usual how long is a piece of string kind of answer to that as well, to say that that's not set in stone, and that is something that we are going to have to work to understand, and we've already asked internally about how that works. This is new to us. It's likely going to be part of Chapter 66A of the Town Code. For Article 67, I'm going to have a discussion and with Crack at a later time, not necessarily today. It's not part of the agenda to discuss the next steps for 67, just to make that clear, Peter. But I will bring it back to the committee at another point to get the committee's want and desires on that, I promise. in the fall, it could come back and it could pass for special town meeting. It might go to town meeting this time next year or a future town meeting. That's something we need to work to understand internally. If it did go forward for special town meeting this fall, then it would be part of the same legislative session for the Senate, for the state. So we could work to get it on, not lose another year. We'd just be further down on the docket, so to speak. And the biggest thing is we need lots of public outreach this summer in particular to get people to understand Article 69 and also lay the foundation for getting what was Article 67 up and running for the home rule petition, so we can bring it back once it's indefinite postponement ends, and we can bring it back at a future town meeting to get that forward. It was an interesting set of discussions at town meeting. All 3 nights of town meeting were recorded. If you did just want to watch these, the third night it is the first 2 points on night 3. So just watch the start of the video to see Articles 67 and 69 and see how the discussion went. I would like to say that I am quite sorry to the committee. I fought as hard as I could to get 67 understood. We had lots of information. We did all of the public outreach that we could online. We need to try and figure out a better job. We also need to look at another possible solution. We had a lot of people speaking at town meeting who don't attend crack meetings. I wonder if we could work to invite them, to bring them into the tent, as it were, to have them understand how this system works and how the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee works, and that we could see about how to improve this and have a better showing at the next town meeting for these kinds of things. Thank you, Peter.
Okay. You all set, Vincent?
I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay. I'm going to go first, and then I'll take comments from everybody. I'm recalling what Bobby DaCosta said, which was, it comes up as it's a classic town meeting, article blocker where you see the wall of text coming down on the screen, and you're like, we don't understand all this legalese, and we don't know anything about this, and oh my God, we got to stop it. And so you end up with a tabling motion, or you get a postpone indefinitely motion, and he was partially right, and I kind of chickened out, and I should have gotten up and said something, but Vincent covered everything that I wanted to say, but after he was done, and I realized what I should have got up and said, and it would have been, I don't know if I could have done it like eloquently enough, but the essence of it is that the media needs to cover us better. There needs to be regular stories in the newspaper so the broader audience of Nantucket gets to know what's going on. And having been a person who wrote for 2 newspapers out here, we're instructed to write for the guy in the coffee shop, for the person, so that they get it, so they understand, and agree or disagree, but there it is in the paper, and then people can write letters to the editor, and you get a conversation going. So that would have helped us immensely. It may have turned more people against us because they understood it, but at least we got it out there, and it wouldn't be a surprise at town meeting. Instead of just saying, oh, this came out months ago and there were public hearings, well, we could have said it, but it was also in the newspaper. There were X amount of numbers of articles in the newspaper, so you can't say that you don't know anything about it. So Leah and myself, and maybe Vince need to, go to the Inky, go to the Current, go to Yesterday's Island, and see if we can get some better coverage. And Yesterday's Island, it's another great place where you can just have a little story, and a lot of people can read it. It's people who are coming here a lot that are reading Yesterday's Island, but the Inky should be covering us. They're not. To Jason's credit, he's here a fair amount, but he needs to be here more often. We can invite people to meetings, but they may not come. So we just got to get the word out that way. And I think that we should also keep going with our posts on Thursdays and explain it through that. Anyway, I'll take comment from other people. I see Gary Beller has his hand up. Go ahead, Gary.
Thank you. So I watched all three meetings, which was quite painful. And of course, I'm always stunned by the fact that that these meetings, town decisions are made by 3% of the voters in the town, or maybe 4% on a good day, but just horrible. So my first question relates to the difference between the two different proposals. I recall when we started talking about them, one was the change in the charter, and the other was the bylaw. And at the time, I had the opinion, my personal opinion, was that they were pretty similar, and that there wasn't a big difference between one or the other. One amended the charter, one way to do that, which would have to go to the state and take a long time to do. And the other was change the bylaws, which is what we actually did. I did not have the impression when we were meeting with our town council and talking about this, I did not have the impression that based on the 67, we were allowed to do the assessment without going back to the voters. I thought that under whether it's the bylaw or the town charter change, we eventually have to get the approval of the voters, which is what we do on betterments anyway. So at least that was my early opinion. The other comment I have is that since it was obvious that of the 3 or 4% of the people that actually were at the meeting, I would say 95% of them were ill-informed about our committee and these proposals. And so the question is there any thought that we should try to put 67 back now for the special town meeting in September, and then work hard between now and September to actually educate the public that we're not trying to immediately saddle everyone with huge taxing costs or betterments. So, because we do have the chance to put something in by May 30, and we probably wouldn't have to change what we put in before. It would probably be the same thing, but we could have a little more time at least to educate the public about what it really means. Those are my comments.
Okay. Thanks, Gary. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Yeah, I think one thing that became really clear from the discussion at town meeting was, I know everyone's saying like we have to do better education and things like that, but I agree with Pete with what you said of like, for any of the articles at town meeting, when there's so much legalese and it's like scrolling on the screen and everyone's flipping through their books, obviously for something like this, there needs to be a lot of that legal language and for clarity in the book. But what I think is the most targeted way and something that we could do is create a one-pager of like the clarity of language and like how the article benefits the community. Leah did a great job in the article that she put out, like separate from crack, but around the paid family leave, I think it was. Yeah, where there was some just really good, clear, like a yes vote does this, and like I think that's really helpful for people to see, like a yes vote does not increase your taxes. Like that was a very clear something that people were concerned about. And if you don't know about it, and then your neighbor asked that question, and then there's a fear of that, then of course there's like a concern, even if like people haven't fully understood it. So if we had some kind of, like one page or even half a page, like simple thing that's like bulleted of just clarity of language. So it's something that we can show people, shop around. But then also the most important thing is that all of us on the committee have the same language to use for clarity. I think in having to try to explain it or, which we should be doing, then sometimes we talk, I'm very guilty of this, of talking in circles or talking too much about the thing when it's like, this is what this, Article 67 does. This is what Article 69 does. And a yes vote does this, like it sets the stage, whatever it might be. So whether it's for this one or for future ones, I think that would be an avenue I would recommend. And the other thing I wanted to say was, I actually write for Yesterday's Island. I have a weekly column on science and nature, and I'm happy to write more about the committee if that's of interest. And so I think that's something that I'm happy to do. Whether or not I was on the committee in the first place, I know it's a newspaper that's like more frequently picked up physically by tourists, but it's available digitally, and so then we can also share those articles. And that way, I'm happy to write something like from the perspective of the committee itself, if that's helpful. I know it doesn't have maybe some of the reach of the others, but that might be helpful. And then really quickly, just the last thing I want to say about town meeting was there was clear confusion about what CRAC does versus the town projects and other organizations' projects. So people kept talking about certain parts of Washington Street or certain very specific projects that in many cases we are not a part of. And so I think in the future with different projects, being really clear, like this is a land bank project, or this is a conservation foundation project, or this is a collaborative project that does include the town, or whatever. Like, because I think that there's we're the committee that people can come to, but there are coastal resilience projects, obviously, we all know this, across the board that has lots of different implementation. So just being clear about who is in charge of whatever different projects. Okay, sorry, that was like 3 different main points, but that's all I got.
Thank you, Sarah. I think a lot of that we could also put out in our weekly posts. All right, go ahead, Abby.
Thanks. I agree with a lot of what Gary and Sarah said. I was saying, Sarah, I actually heard from someone specifically request exactly what you said, which was a quick summary of any of the articles. And I do think that would be super helpful, because that was something someone brought up to me. And again, like you said, not just about our articles, I think about everything, but I think having, a summary, like you said, consistent language, things like that, I think it would just be really helpful. Because, I mean, Peter, Sarah, you both guys talked about this, people scrolling through, and then when people make amendments, people don't really know what's going on. So I think having a very concise snapshot would be helpful. And then the other thing that came up that I thought was a really good idea, Peter, was how you were saying trying to get more info out there. And again, I think you're right, this was not just with our articles, was maybe we could get the Current and the Inky to do more of talking about, hey, these are the meetings coming up this week, and these are topics that we're going to cover. Because I do feel and it wasn't just us, even with the airport, all these things where people are we didn't know this was happening, or they don't know about it. And to your point, I think it's frustrating for all of us, because we're we've had many meetings about this, but if the Current even could just, in Daybreak or something, if they say hey, these are all the meetings coming up this week and these topics might be covered, I think it would be a lot more helpful. Because I think, to your point, people don't necessarily know when meetings are happening. And I've heard that different things is oh, well, I didn't even know they had a meeting about this. And to your point, it's we do what we can and publicize things, but I think it just needs to come from one of those sources where if everybody gets a Daybreak email and it's in there, people might see it, they might not, but I think it can't hurt to add it. But also, I think the other idea is Sarah, I think it's a great idea. Even if you could do an article in Yesterday's Island, I think that's great, just to have something out there. And that's something that, again, we can point to. Even if you write an article, let's say you wrote an article in a month, we can point back to it as hey, here's some background about what we do, type of thing. And if it lives both in print and digital, I think that would help. So those are just kind of original my thoughts, but just reiterating, I think all of those things would really help.
Excellent. Thanks, Abby. Go ahead, Jen.
Thanks, Pete. I think everyone's saying a lot of really great stuff. I have it was two comments. One is that following up on the fact that I think a lot of people don't know what crack actually is and what our current tasks are now that the CRP has been published. I mean, it might behoove us to have some kind of, meeting, whether it's a public meeting that we're actually in public for at a different time, that's a come and meet the crack and learn what we actually do kind of meeting, not, one of these meetings where we're going through business, but something that is a way to connect and talk with people about what it is we do, what we can actually do, and what we're trying to accomplish. I think there'd be some benefit there for the public, and maybe then get people to pay more attention to what's going on. Because in some of our meetings, we accomplish a lot, some we're just learning. And so getting newspapers to show up and write on what we're doing, I think often people have come and just haven't seen something that's, worth grabbing their attention on to write an article about. But I think reaching more of the public to talk about what we're actually doing so then they get invested would be important. And then the other piece is that I think it's great for us to move forward with what we're doing with these resilience districts and figuring out how to get people on board. But a lot of what I was hearing at town meeting was there were different opinions from people. There were people that said the whole island should be taxed for anything that happens because it impacts the whole island. Some people were saying, oh, it makes sense to have a district, so it's only one area that's paying for things. We invite the public to our meetings, but I don't know that, we are representing these ideas to the select board of what are going to be good decisions for the town to make. Us perhaps having some kind of listening tour, places where we're saying, this is an idea we're thinking about, and getting people to come and talk with us about it, opening it up to the public on particular ideas to discuss that are coming forward. That might be a way for us to gather more information that can help us make a better decision about what to present to the select board, or better ways to think this through. We've thought through these ideas, and it took us as a committee a really long time to work through these coastal resilience districts. It took us a long time to understand what they even were and what the benefits were and what the possibility was. So it seems like from this, we might need to do some more work. That's us listening and gathering information and then taking that and helping it inform what our next steps are going to be. Thanks.
Thanks, Jen. Matt, go ahead.
Hey guys, couple things. Number one, Libby shared with her staff a lot of the views that Vince opened today with about being able to inform people better, etc. So I think the town knows that when there are direct questions, someone from the town side, on the proposal needs to stand up and answer them clearly and directly. And so I think that was, I think there's general agreement. Number two is I think people are not going to pay attention. They're like, I've done a fair amount of fundraising. People don't donate to concepts. They donate to things. They don't donate to, oh yeah, we'll do something with it later. You say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to buy tables. We're going to pay teachers. We're going to do this and that. People will donate. So we have to say, this is what we're doing, and they also don't show up until their ox is gored. People don't pay attention until they think it's going to cost them something. Once it's going to cost them, then they show up and say, don't charge me, spread it among everybody. And, and we had the same issue when we were doing the sewer planning. And it was very, very polarized, and it took, a while. And what we need to do to people who are concerned about what it'll cost them, explain how bad it will be to all of us, to everybody, how much more it will cost them if we don't use betterments, etc. And so we need those numbers handy, and we need to be able to say, hey, if we just make the whole island, it'll be this, and your taxes will triple, whatever it ends up being. If we do this, we'll get more things done, and it'll, and it won't be, we have to be able to answer that. We need to pick a project or two like Washington Street and, and a couple others, and use some of these things with regular betterments and show how it works. Once people see, like we're talking on Washington Street, that group is talking about doing outreach, and the neighbors will all show up. And at that point, sort of an understanding of how that most of that is going to be paid by the public because it's a public use. Most of that, some of these things fall away, what we're trying to do is helpful for that area, and I think the neighbors have some good insight, like, okay, we don't want to have, retaining ponds next to our houses, but, there's a point there, but anyhow, that's, I think that outreach is going to help. And the final thing is, I don't think this isn't just a public relations thing. This isn't like, oh, we'll just do, and I said this to Libby when she sent it out to staff. This is more a, uh, simple message, and prove it thing. What are we doing and why are we doing it? Where's our victories? I think, we could be calling newspapers and putting things in forever. It's not going to move the needle. A victory, doing something positive that people all get behind is what is needed to move the needle on this. The final thing, there was one other, not public relations. Anyway, if it comes, it'll pop. I have another one, but it'll pop back. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Shelley, I see your hand, but we won't take public comment until we're completely done with this item. So just remember that. And as we come to the end, put your hand up again, okay?
I remember it, Steve. If I get one more thing, Peter, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think all along, the coastal resiliency districts of the state has been a long-term plan. That's a 3, 5, 10-year deal. It may not even pass the state because there'll be lobbyists against it and, everything else. And so I think we have to say, okay, what can we use now? And the idea that we can't use betterments because there's more costs later. Well, why don't we better it every year if we have to? We figure out how to work within the parameters we have, as opposed to putting it off for 5 or 10 years, hoping that we get something. I think we have to move forward on a few examples that we can use existing rules now to prove successful. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Christy?
Yeah, just a few comments. It would be interesting to see, it's an interesting relationship with this committee with, really seems like our main charge is really to advise the Board of Selectmen, but we really have a responsibility to, educate the public as well, which is something that if it's not in our charge should be, amended somewhat. And then as far as outreach, I just want to make a comment. I know that Civic League does meet the articles, and I don't know if we usually have a representative there or if they take responsibility of that, but that most people that probably go to or attend to those, whether it's in person or online, are most likely people that are going to town meeting. Those are the people that stay involved. So that could be something we just put on our list as far as educating people on articles relating to coastal resiliency. Thank you.
Great idea. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, just really quickly, I was not surprised when basically very, very quickly it all became about taxes and not about sea level rise or problems that are coming. So it seems to me that gives us a clue as to how we should approach this with people in the future. But in the end, I honestly thought the reaction, a lot of it negative, is good because it's kind of gotten everybody's attention. And I think it ought to get the attention of the press for that reason. And it may give us an opening to get the press to do some coverage. So.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you. Vince?
Thank you, Peter. So I've been taking notes and I have some responses for some of the points that committee members were making. I'm going to try and follow about the same order. And I'm going to try and be brief. So Gary was talking about the difference, the commonalities and the difference between the bylaw and the home rule petition. Yes, they're extremely similar. The bylaw and the home rule petition were very slightly different, and that we used the home rule petition being different, that it allows us an ability to look at assessing betterments as a coastal resilience district. So we wanted to include that. And that was clearly something people had an issue with. So we were using something that is a difference between a bylaw and a home rule petition. Abby and Sarah had very similar points about a one-pager. The town did a voting guide on all town meeting articles, and there was a couple of paragraphs, 2 paragraphs on Article 67 and 69. There was also one on 68, but that didn't matter because that got withdrawn. But I put those together, so there was a guide on this already. But it gets complicated, and I'm just going to use a different article, 72, just for the sake of example. People were walking up and down as you walked into town meeting, handing out flyers for other articles, but because these were town-sponsored articles, it's not as easy. So that's why we have a voter's guide for those, whereas you can't really hand out a one-pager for those. Now, we still could create a one-pager, put it online, and post that everywhere, but not for something we could hand out at town meeting. Then Jen, she said, come and meet crack. Hell, yes, please. That was a great suggestion. And it reminded me, the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee used to do area-specific meetings. Do you remember we did some on Tuckernuck, on Madakit, I think one on Sconset, and we could do more of those, but change it from like area-specific to topic-specific, or go back to area-specific once we do have a Coastal Resilience district plan to use. So yes, that's an idea there. And then the other thing that Jen was saying was whole island should be taxed for some things. I'm paraphrasing, I apologize, Jen. I'm just using that as kind of an example because other people mentioned similar things. 1 second. The idea that not have sub-districts, but everyone should be taxed for big things. That's something that's already kind of within the remit of Capcom and FinCom for capital projects. So big capital projects that will have the Coastal Resilience District moniker attached to them, it can help those pass when we have to bring them to Capcom and FinCom, if that's the right way of putting it.
Just real quick, Vince, if I can, Peter.
Yes.
A clarification. I wasn't saying that. I was saying those are the things I was hearing in the room.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Understood, Jen, and apologies. I did say I was misrepresenting. I did say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for my cough, people. Matt had a point about inform people more. Yes, absolutely. Then he had an idea about having 1 or 2 example projects. Coastal Resilience districts, particularly the sub-districts, will be the better one to have an example for on a small area that has a benefit. I'm thinking more like a small part of Madakit, Sheep Pond Road, no Nantum, a small section of Baxter Road, a small section of Swan Road, something to that effect. An area that has an existing problem where there might be an existing solution, where there's a really defined problem and a defined solution and a defined benefits area that can become a coastal resilience sub-district. The idea of using Washington Street as an example for the island-wide one is a potential, but we still have to finish developing a plan there first. So that is a nice idea, Matt, but might be jumping the gun a little bit because we're still working on developing how that is going to work. We're months, if not years, from finishing that. Christy, public outreach, yes. The Civic League is one of the things you mentioned. I spoke at Civic League. I brought this to Civic League. I was part of that, and it was recorded by Civic League and NCTV and was available. So I try to catch every outlet I possibly could, including that. I did meet the articles. And Tim had a real interesting point about how sea level rise wasn't an issue. People accepted it. It wasn't a mention. I thought that was amazing myself, I have to say. And I'm glad Tim brought it up and caught that. And that this was more about a payment system. So that in itself is a huge win because it shows that we're progressing. And we do now have a bylaw that we'll have to get enacted over this summer to push this forward. I beg your pardon. But I do appreciate what everyone said, and I tried as hard as I could. We're going to have to work harder for the home rule petition. Thank you, Peter.
Okay, thank you, Vince, for all that clarification. Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, I just wanted to give my 2 cents about town meeting. I thought that I agree with everyone. I think, education or outreach and trying to get the word out, even though we tried to, I think that is something that CRAC can focus on. If, if what was Article 67, if that is going to be coming up at the next town meeting this fall, then that's something that we can work on together throughout the summer. And I heard a lot, of different projects and things, and some people had, alluded to Easy Street, and part of me wanted to jump up and say, hey, we're working on this, but it just wasn't the forum to do that. And so I think this summer too, CRAC, in maybe once in July and once in August, we can figure out a venue and have people come there and say, just talk about coastal resiliency stuff, ask questions. We can give a very brief overview of what CRAC does and kind of what the town is working on. And then we can just listen and see what people say to us. Because I did hear a lot of things on town meeting 4 that weren't really either coastal resilience related, and people thought they were. And so just hear what people have to say. And I know that you guys did that a lot during the coastal resilience plan as you were developing it, but now we're starting to implement it. So I think that we should do that again. And then Chrissy, to your point, education is in your charge. So there is a section that says assisting with obtaining community feedback, including ways to engage seasonal residents and ensure that all areas of the island are represented. So it's there.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Leah. Go ahead, Christy.
Yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around the whole argument of, the coastal resiliency districts and the argument of where the tax burden lies. And I think as a committee that advises the community, it would be in our best interest, I think, to really show the components of both sides and really make a proper comparison, with both sides. Because I think if we're leaning to one side or the other, there's always going to be arguments from the opposing side that's going to muddy it, and the confusion will continue. So I do think that to some extent we should try to find a way to really detail kind of both approaches on how tax responsibility lies with the community, with island-wide, but also with property owners who there is certainly direct benefits in the way of property values and longevity and access. There's no question that comes into play. And I think, I just think that as a committee that advises the community, it would be in our better interest to really kind of detail maybe both sides somewhat, so that the argument is clearer, because that argument will carry this on and on if we don't clarify that main point. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy. Go ahead, Abby.
Yeah, I completely agree with Christy and Matt that, I think the money is really where people will pay attention, because I think people zone out and then all of a sudden they start to think it's going to cost them money. So I think Christy makes a really good point that if we're very clear and articulate, how much it'll cost, like doing something versus not doing something, like if we're able to put a number to that and help people understand that financially the long-term benefit is to kind of address these things, I think that's a really good point, because that's what makes people pay attention is the money. And the only other thing I was going to say that we might want to consider is, I think here you brought it up, is we might want to consider also that at some point, if town meeting isn't the only venue, like if we do eventually move away from town meeting, what would be the most effective way for us to kind of engage with these types of things going forward? Just because I do think this was a really difficult time, and I definitely heard from a lot of people afterward that people are like, town meeting's done, blah blah blah, which I don't know if that's true or not, but I do think we should just consider preparing ourselves if that does happen down the line, of how we can address that as well.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Abby. Go ahead, Gary.
So continuing one of my thoughts, since the meeting did pass that portion of the law, the bylaw provision, so we are able to go forward. And I think that we should go forward. And I think as we, over the next few meetings, when we start talking about CRDs and educating the public, what we need to do based on what we heard at the town meeting is the first sentence of every report to the public ought to be, no one's getting taxed unless the town meeting approves it, okay? Because we understand that to do these betterments and under the bylaw, we would need to go to the town meeting to get the approval for the tax increment that might be added. So, but it would be in our interest to start off every time we talk about it, because that's the big point that the public worried about. Am I going to get taxed without me voting on it, without me knowing it? And if we start out, like, at least people will relax, saying, okay, I'm going to have a shot at that. And if I don't like it, we'll just vote it down. In the meantime, we do have the bylaw passed. As Matt said, the home rule petition, we always knew was going to take many years to get done. We don't have to wait for that. We do have the bylaw provision, and that ought to give us the flexibility to start thinking about the Island Coastal Resilience District and perhaps some small segments, small CRDs that we would decide this is a perfect area for a special CRD. Once again, when we educate the public, we say no one's getting taxed yet until we go to the town meeting, but at least we should take steps to start moving forward, because we have got the approval to do the CRDs, and I'm thrilled that we did that. And since the other thing was going to take forever anyway, we shouldn't lose the opportunity to move forward. That's all. I'm finished.
Okay. Did you have more to say, Abby? No. Okay, Leah.
Thanks, Peter. I just wanted to reiterate the kind of the process. So, like Vince had mentioned, it needs to go into the Nantucket Code. We're trying to figure out when that will happen, and then CRAC can't just start making sub-districts right now. We have to wait for the select board to ask you all for recommendations of how to make the sub-districts. There also has to be projects for those sub-districts. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Leah. So I, as instructed by Leah and Vince, wrote a letter in response to public comment that we got from Mr. Connick here, who's been following our meetings religiously, and it's in our packet. Everyone's seen it. And I want to know whether the board wants me to read it into the record, or are we good with what we see? What do you guys think? I'm happy to read it.
I read his letter and your letter. I think you did a good job, Peter.
Okay, anybody else? Sarah?
Can I just say before we move on, didn't Shelley want to talk on the last point?
Shelley? Well, we're on item 5, which includes the points all encapsulated by item 5.
Sorry.
So we're completely done. I'm not going to forget her.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just thought it followed what we were just talking about.
Thank you.
Okay, so am I reading this letter, you guys, or are we leaving it as is?
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Is the letter that you're going to read different from what's in the packet?
No.
Okay, then I think personally we've all read it and it's in the packet as part of public record, but I think then if Mr. Connick wants to comment on it, I think that's fine. I do think maybe if I personally would like to hear what Shelley had to say based on what we were just talking about, because I know it's still part of the same thing, but it's a little bit of a shift from what we were just talking about.
All right. Well, it sounds like we're all good with letting the letter stand as it is, and I'll allow Shelley to talk right now. So go ahead, Shelley.
I appreciate that. I realize it might be a little out of order. Thanks, Sarah. Speaking as a member of the public who tries very, very hard to understand everything that's going on here, I had 3 points. One is that the idea of watching all these meetings, going to all 3 nights of town meeting, CRAC seems to be trying to wear 2 hats here. One is that you're all brilliant scientists and you're trying, there's that whole thing over here. And the other hat is publicity and communication, right? And they're 2 separate expertises. And I see a breakdown happening between how much you know and how much you want to help and help getting that message out. So I don't know anyone's degrees. I don't know what all your specialties are. If anyone already involved in CRAC has a communications degree, an advertising degree, any expertise in those areas, that's where I see the breakdown happening. So I just want to put that out there. I follow this and I get less confused, but still not as clear as I could be. So I just think, like, for instance, one of the things that I can speak from with experience regarding CRAC is I worked very hard with Leah, thank you very much, and Isabel Perkins to come up with a bullet list. You guys mentioned earlier a bullet list. It didn't come out anything like a bullet list. It went into CRAC and it came out a brochure and I was like, what? That is not what I wanted. So I want to caution from my personal experience what you're trying to do, which is extremely admirable, and your messaging. Because that's where I see a breakdown happening. And it's frustrating to me because I try to communicate it as well. I tried to come up with a bullet list for real estate agents. It didn't happen. It came out way different. So I'm just throwing a caution out there. Third point I want to make is you were also mentioning earlier about how do we get input, okay? And this thought just crossed my mind, and I don't want to go down the town meeting route where everybody talks longer than they're supposed to, me now, but also with what I'm about to suggest. You guys all do a lot of walks, a lot of public out, particularly I join in on the walks. So Concom does them, Linda Loring does, there's a variety of them. Potentially you could say when those walks are scheduled, at the end, if anyone wants to stay 10 minutes longer, we'll take public comments on certain points and just write them down and just help people understand. This isn't deciding anything. We just want to hear from you. Those are concerned people about the island. They're out there to learn it, to love it, to enjoy it, right? So that's just was another thought. Done. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. Yep. Okay, where are we? Also under those bullet points, we had ideas for future outreach and engagement before town meeting, but I think we've already done that. And then a summer education forum.
Peter?
I think, yeah.
Deanne does have her hand up, and then we said that we were going to discuss the public comment letter, but haven't done that yet.
Okay, so I don't want to get in the habit of public comment going all through of our agenda items. So Deanne, if this has relevance to this particular discussion, then yes, please talk. Otherwise, wait till the end.
All right, Peter, I'm just pausing because I don't know. I just have a question, a factual question about betterments that related to the discussion you were having about the Coastal Resilience District. And I think it's an important question to ask and have answered. So I can ask it now, or I can wait until the end of the meeting.
No, go ahead, please.
Thank you. The question is, must betterments be approved by town meeting? And if yes, were the Sheep Pond Road betterments approved by town meeting?
Go ahead, Vince.
That's going to take a bit of a complex answer, particularly as it relates to Sheep Pond Road. I'll get you a written response. Okay, Deanne?
Thank you, Vince, very much. I think it's important for all of these deliberations that we have this very important question asked and answered by legal counsel.
Yep. Again, this is confusion between projects, but I will get you the answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, for your indulgence.
Okay. So what are we doing next, Leah?
If any crack members wanting to discuss the letter in regards to the public comment from Mr. Koenig, if anybody else wanted to add anything in and start a discussion.
Are there any comments from you guys about the letter that I wrote? Or anything else that needed to be added in that you saw from the letter? Anything you saw missing? I apologize that you didn't get to see it before we decided to put it in the packet, but it's just the way it is. So if you want to add anything, Christy?
Yeah, Peter. No, I think it's a good letter. There's some really good paragraphs in here. I do think there anywhere, as this is coming from the committee, I do think anywhere, Peter, where you kind of refer to yourself in your thoughts, that you kind of generalize that more of a committee alignment as opposed to your alignment. I know we all probably feel similar, but I do think that should be generalized more from the committee as opposed to yourself. But I get it.
That's Christy. That's where I was, writing it, and
I get it.
I obviously didn't have time to show it to you guys, and so I was just saying from my perspective. But I hear what you're saying. So definitely next time. Well, hopefully it won't be a next time, and you guys will see it and get to vet it.
Yeah, and maybe in that second paragraph, Article 69 passing is the first step in identifying potential project areas. I didn't know if we should replace that with districts, but I think the project areas might make sense. Yeah, I have a few very minor things, but that was mostly it.
Okay, is there anybody else? If there's no one else, and I know Mr. Connick is listening in, I'd really like it, sir, if you could explain to us. I know right now you're only writing. Your ability is to write to us and not speak, and that's fine. But I really would like to understand what you were saying when you said unregulated committees, because that's the thing I stuck on, and that's why I gave an exhaustive explanation of what we are for a committee, so you understood. But if you could explain that point in another email, that would help us a lot. Is there anyone else? Okay, nobody else. Summer Education Forum. Leah, were you thinking that's going to be some sort of public information gathering? Where you're going to tell people about what we're doing so that everybody gets it, and then we get information like we did for the open house public input when we were writing the plan?
Yeah, it's just an idea that I had, that would like to hear from other members what, the consensus was that people need to know what CRAC is doing, and to educate them also just about coastal resilience, what's happening here on the island in general. So there's other thoughts of, we had talked about it, but just having, a forum a day during the summer too, different times where people could come and just talk and listen. I don't know if that could be at the State of the Harbor. We could have I don't know. It might just have to be a different forum.
Okay. Do we have any discussion about this? Do you guys have thoughts? Joanna, go ahead.
Hi, sorry. I don't know what's going on with my camera. Well, that's why I was trying to be off, I think. All right. I think that's a really good idea, Leah, and I think it would be important to do that. And however I can support you in that, please let me know.
Right. Thanks, Joanna. Well, okay, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Leah, I think that's a great idea, and it kind of combines some of the other ideas, like what Jen and others said. I think sort of like an office hours where you have, if you schedule it for somewhere in person at some point, or, and then you can just like let us know when it is, and then a subset of us, like whoever can make it, could come, if to help support, like, do you want to, I don't know. I mean, that's sort of the function of our meetings. People can come and have public comment, but I think we have been told again and again that 10 a.m. on the middle of a weekday is hard for some people to get to. So maybe thinking of that, if there is like something scheduled that's sort of like, what does crack do? To think about it maybe in an evening or something like that. And then just to reiterate what others said, like those of us who work for land trusts or education organizations, we do talk about coastal resiliency broadly, and I definitely answer questions when people have them about crack and the work that we do. So I think those opportunities exist for like the broad conversation at our organizations, but I can't say that we would like talk about crack like definitely at our public spheres. But I think that between all the different avenues for education that are represented in this group, I think that we can do more. It's just making sure that we have consistent messaging and being clear, right, about the broad coastal resiliency and then the specific actions of crack. And I think that's something I'm learning about is needed. We're like, what's going on in Nantucket broadly for climate change impacts versus like, this is exactly what the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee is doing as an advisory committee. And so I think just keeping that in mind.
I totally agree. And I think the State of the Harbor Forum is a great place for us to set up a table if possible, and maybe even speak with Emily Molden about having a few minutes to get our message out once we have all those people there. And we can keep, and if we can create a sheet that we can hand out, I mean, we should take every opportunity that we have. Go ahead, Gary.
One opportunity that will present itself this summer, every summer in July, I think it's in July, the Civic League holds an open forum where they invite all members of the public to the Athenaeum, and the select board and Libby usually show up to talk about all the stuff going on. So perhaps that's an opportunity for either Matt or someone to be able to stand up and just mention a few things about crack, that we do exist, that we don't have the power to impose taxes or anything like that, but that we do serve as an advisor to the select board, because they get a pretty good turnout at that July session for questions from the public. It's an opportunity.
Great. Thanks, Gary. Thanks for telling us about that. Go ahead, Jen.
Sure. I was just going to say, Sarah and I are doing the Climate Change Summit again this year.
I have a car ferry reservation for Wednesday.
Hello.
There we go. Sorry. I was going to say, Sarah and I are doing the Climate Change Summit again in September. And Leah, we can talk about a table and other ways that we can present information there. I think it froze. I might have froze. Sorry, my computer's wonky. But I do think us doing a targeted education that's just crack would be a really smart idea too. There's just so much going on and so much information in the summer. So Leah, let us know what you think and how we can help.
Okay. All right. Do we have any more on this? I think we're kind of talked out on this on this item. So are there any comments from the public on item 5? Okay, we'll move on to a discussion and ideas for the next site visit. And for those who didn't make it to the last one, it was very, very informative. I know we're all busy, but are you guys into doing another one this summer? Yes, okay. So I was thinking we might try and, go to the 2 sites on Pulpus Road, Folgers Marsh, and then Sacajah Pond. How does that sound to everybody? Yes, I'm seeing nodding heads. So I guess that's okay. So then I guess I'll have Leah send out a doodle poll. Go ahead, Leah.
Peter, if we can just kind of lock down like a month, which month is better,
Okay.
so that I can send a doodle poll.
Okay. So what month yeah, what month? Everyone's thinking, yeah, sure, October, but do you want to say later in June sometime? Does that sound good? Because July and August are pretty much a wash. So sometime in June. Nod if you think that's okay. Yes. Shake your head no. Whatever. All right. Well, I'm going to take it from the people who are nodding their heads that we're going to do it in sometime in June.
Late June.
You want late June? You're the sadist. Okay. But the more time we have to nail it down, then we'll do it. Okay. You have your marching orders. Okay. So discussion on sharing or taking over secretary responsibilities. And that's because Doug is getting quite busy with his other responsibilities. And so, as we have in the past, we've had people who shared the secretary duty. So, if there's anybody who wants to help Doug out when he can't do the minutes, that'd be cool. Otherwise, we can appoint somebody else. Go ahead, Leah.
I'm not raising my hand to do the minutes, but I just want to say that, sorry, Doug, that the first meeting in June is when you all vote on who's chair, vice chair, secretary, all of that. So it would be for basically the 2 meetings in June that Doug would need help with.
I think it's July, right? It's the end of the fiscal year, right? It's the first meeting in July.
Did I say June? Yeah, first meeting in July. Sorry if I said June.
So
the 2 meetings that he would need help with are for June, right, Doug?
Peter, can I chime in?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, first I want to apologize to everybody. I've been acting as secretary since I got involved with CRAC, which is just about a year ago. It's July of last year when I started, and I initially felt very bullish about how much discretionary time I'd have. And it's not for lack of an interest or desire to continue doing it. It's really because I've been swamped, and I don't see a change in the outlook for my personal time. I've just gotten engaged in a lot of very time-consuming projects with some nonprofits and whatnot. So anyway, I apologize that I said yes, I do it, and now a year later, I'm kind of feeling like I may have bitten off more than I can chew. I mean, I would ideally like to end my time as secretary at the end of the year, meaning the end of say the end of June, early July. But if that's not feasible, if no one else is able or willing to step up and do the full task of secretary, I could potentially share the burden. It's just I know right now I'm not keeping up with it as I should. So that's the reason behind my request. Thanks.
I feel your pain, Doug. I'm behind on several fronts on two boards, so I know what you're dealing with. So is there anybody who's thinking about it? I guess you have some time, so we don't have to decide it now, but just you've heard from Doug and what he's up against. And, I mean, most committees, speaking for myself, being on the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board, every year after the elections, we appoint new members. We appoint new, executive members. So we most certainly wait till the first meeting in July. Hopefully somebody will step up. Well, someone's going to have to step up. So, but maybe it'll be a situation where someone will step up to help him out, and if he can help you, and then eventually transition into it full on. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, just to add to that, I have to say this is my first experience as a secretary, and I can highly recommend it in that I think the fact that you need to go back and rewatch each meeting and record all those, I know Peter can identify with this. I've come out of this experience, I feel, with a greater knowledge and depth of understanding of all the various conversations we've been having. And it's amazing how much you glean forcing yourself to go back and watch again because you hear nuances that you missed the first time. So I don't want to say this is all burden. It's actually been a very great learning experience for me, and I would recommend it to anybody who wants to get a little bit more deeply involved. I think you come out of it that much more knowledgeable and engaged. So I'm doing a little bit of a backhanded sell job on anybody who's sort of thinking about it. It's actually it can be a lot of fun. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, you guys got some time to think about it. So hopefully we can not have to, force you to do it. So, okay. Okay, so public outreach ideas, strategies, and committee members. I think we pretty much covered all that. If there are other ideas that we have, reach out to the media, to the various organizations. We talked about that, the Civic League. And if we have more ideas, I want to hear them. If not, hopefully we have an updated media scorecard summary from Doug. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I spoke to you about this a while back, Peter. I have a friend who is on the board of the Inky Mirror, and he is volunteering to go to the editors and set up some kind of a discussion with us about how they might be covering our work and the coastal resilience plan and so on. So I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know what contact anybody has made with Inky Mirror to date, so I don't want to get in the way of anything, but it might be an opportunity for us to set up some communication with them and talk about some ideas. So I wonder what people think of that.
What do you guys think?
Okay.
How are you?
Good.
That's
Okay.
good.
Yes.
All right. We don't need to vote on this or anything, right? I can just go talk to them and have them approach.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, we'll do.
Yeah. See if they'll do a series on us,
Yeah.
over the course of the summer so that people are reading it,
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of different ways to approach it, but if we could get in a room with them and make some proposals, or they'll make some proposals, or both, might be productive. So, okay, let me give it a shot.
All right, thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Leah?
Thanks, Peter. I just wanted to answer Tim. So yeah, we haven't been in contact with the Inky. The only thing that Crack has sent out was the notice back in the fall that we were doing, weekly social media posts, and if they wanted to share that information, they could. None of the media outlets responded. So there's that. But I think if you have a connection with the Inky, that it's a great opportunity to start a conversation and see what happens with it. And
Great.
Yeah, as far as the second bullet point, help reaching out to the aligned organizations to add coastal resilience content to their newsletters. So back when we started this media campaign, Doug helped me reach out to the organizations to see, who would want to or who could add information to their newsletter. And a couple of them did. I've just been slammed as well and haven't been able to reach back out to them. So I think if anybody is available to help, I know it's not a great time of year to add more onto your plate, but it is a great opportunity now that people are coming back to the island. It'll, reach a wider net. So if anybody would like to help me reaching back out to the organizations, please just send me an email. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Leah. Okay. Do you have an updated media scorecard for us, Doug?
No, not this week. Sorry.
Okay. It's been a little while, so maybe the next meeting, hopefully.
I think I submitted one last time.
Did we?
Leah said so. Yeah.
Okay.
And we're in kind of a stasis mode right now. We're not seeing huge spikes in any given week. So, I'll definitely take care of it before next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, new business committee and natural resources department reports from our various boards: planning board, CONCOM, SHAB, select board, advisory committee on non-voting taxpayers, and other committee members. Tim, is there anything from CONCOM we should be knowing about?
I believe it's very confusing. Things keep getting delayed and switched around, and the bluff thing is there's still more meetings to come on that. I believe, however, next Thursday, is it? No, wait a minute. The 9th. Sorry, excuse me. Let me look at my calendar. The 6th, I think we're going to be discussing the regulations updates and possibly voting on it. So just a heads up on that.
Okay.
So, and that's, I think SBPF there will be discussion next week as well, but I don't think there's going to be a vote for a while. So,
okay.
That's it. That's all I got.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Discussion of upcoming. Oh, Leah, sorry. Go ahead.
Can I just give a quick update? Last week I attended a conference in Rhode Island. It was the Rhode Island Flood Mitigation Association conference, and I was a co-presenter with Arcadis, Kate Edwards there, and we talked about how the town has been building capacity and community support through the coastal resilience plan from planning to implementation. So I talked about crack, talked about, all the other steps that the town has taken to build that capacity and community support, and got some really great feedback from people that were listening. People are really interested in learning about the $1 million allocated every year for coastal resilience planning and how we, set that up. So just wanted to let you know that that is another avenue that I'm getting the word out about crack to, not just the local community, but within New England. And then when I do present to other, international conferences and stuff like that.
Yeah, it must be exhilarating to go, and sharing with everybody what we're doing since we're right on the edge,
Yeah, people are really impressed with how much Nantucket has done with coastal resiliency and where we're at. A lot of these other towns are, they don't have coastal resilience plans. They know that they need one, or that they should develop one, but they're really interested in learning like how we're taking kind of the lead on this in Massachusetts, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, maybe kind of invite some of those administrative people from other coastal towns to attend our meetings,
Yeah, I told everyone that it's on Zoom, and if anybody wants to attend, they can.
Cool. Okay. Well, all right. Discussion of upcoming meeting dates and topics. Next meeting is June 11th on Zoom. Unless I got anything else from you guys, we're getting done early today. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Christie.
Second.
Seconded by Tim Brain. Roll call vote. Gary Beller.
Aye.
Tim Brain.
Aye.
Doug Rose.
Aye.
Sarah Boyce.
Aye.
Jen Carberg.
Aye.
Joanna Roach.
Aye.
Christy Kickham.
Aye.
And Matt Feedy.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Great.